Hey, everybody. Last week, we launched our very first episode of this Mags and Slabs podcast. And with us kind of feeling things out, we went a little bit long, decided to split the episode into two parts. So here is part 2 of episode 1. Let's jump right back in where we left off.
All right. So we put together this, this is almost this is going to be a segment, we're going to try and do something fun. And so we talked about doing a draft for our top 5 most collectible issues. So Mike and I, we have already made our selections beforehand because we wanted to make sure we had some. We didn't want to spend minutes sitting here thinking and wasting your time. So we've made our selections beforehand. But what we've done is we have done a draft of what we feel are the top 5 most collectible issues. Although, Mike, I know you feel this way, and I felt this way too. It was really hard to push out some of our personal preferences. We tried to keep it as our 5 most collectible, but I know we snuck in a little. I think our personal preferences played a little bit of a factor too. So we're going to go ahead and reveal here our top picks. And Mike, you had the number 1 pick, and you want to tell the people what you went with?
So my first pick is the Michael Jordan first cover of 1983. This is still several years before what we consider as most mainstream, most popular rookie card of Fleer rookie card in 1986. Still a year before a licensed card from Star would come out in 1984. So this is early MJ. This is young MJ. This is, still becoming MJ. So,
yeah,
Michael Jordan, iconic. Yeah, Michael Jordan is a giant in the hobby, no matter what it is. It could be a Wheaties box. It could be cards. It could be shoes. It could be a poster. It could be anything. He's collectible. So that holds true with these sports magazines as well. And in the realm of sports magazines, I have to put this as my number 1 collectible magazine.
And I definitely don't blame you for going with that choice. So with the 1981 cover with Dean Smith, the specifics were that he had a rule where freshmen were not allowed to talk to the media until their first game had been played.
I see. Yes.
And that cover was the preseason, whatever, college basketball preview. And so, he flat out refused. And I think up to that point, he had only had 1, maybe 2 freshmen who had ever started for him. And yeah, I think it was like Sam Perkins, James Worthy, one of the Doherty brothers, I forget which one. And then I think his name was Jimmy King was the 4th one. And Sports Illustrated, I read a whole story about this. It was fascinating. And they begged Dean Smith to let Michael be on the cover because they thought it was going to look really stupid with just 4 guys back there. And in retrospect, I don't think anyone really even thinks much of it unless they know the story. But yeah, it's kind of wild how he went on that season to hit the game winner, in the NCAA championship game, and then his whole sophomore year he was a pretty big star, but was not on the cover. And then this cover that you just picked was heading in. This was the college preview for his junior year, and yeah, this one is it's amazing. I agree with you totally. I definitely would have snagged this one if you didn't. I've got one of them over my shoulder up there in the top middle. It's a beauty. So, all right, you took MJ's first cover. So I had to go with what I consider to be the holy grail of the hobby, and that is Mickey Mantle's first cover. I am actually working on a video right now talking all about this cover and why Mickey is so collectible. So I'm not going to go into too much detail because I want to save that for my video, but it's from 1956, so we're going way back, and I love the vintage. Like I said, I know for a fact there were only 600,000 subscribers to Sports Illustrated at the time that this came out, so Newsstand much fewer. I think right now there's about 50. Last I checked, there was like 52 Newsstand copies of this graded. The Jordan one just went over 100, so still. Yeah. When you compare those numbers to sports cards, they're astronomically low.
Yeah.
But man, Mickey Mantle just seems to be the most legendary athlete when it comes to collectibles. And so, I had to go with the Mick's first cover for my first pick.
Yep, that's definitely an understandable and great pick. So the first Muhammad Ali cover, or the Cassius Clay at the time, from 1963, would be my second pick. This is very low pop count, 27 pop count for Newsstand. I think it's a gorgeous cover aesthetically. You have him prominently in the front with, the London background, the dramatic lighting, just really an amazing cover. And when people think about the greatest athletes of all time, he's one of the first couple that is always included on almost anyone's list. And he's not only in sports, but such a cultural figure. Just a great cover.
This was definitely going to be my number 2 pick if you didn't snag it. So love this one. One thing that I love about it is, like you mentioned, it's 1963, June 1963. He didn't become heavyweight champion until it was either February or March of 64. So this was before he even had become heavyweight champion, but he had really kind of chiseled his way into somewhat of a public figure because of his mouth, and because how how much he talked, and he was quite the entertainer. So I absolutely love this cover. Kind of jealous that you got it at number 2. But I then took, with my second pick, the Wayne Gretzky first cover, which we talked about a little bit earlier. When it comes to Gretzky, you look at baseball and you look at basketball. Well, okay, you look at baseball. It's really hard to say, oh, this person is the greatest of all time. Even basketball, although I would be in the Michael Jordan camp, there's at least a legitimate argument to be had with LeBron and maybe even a couple others.
Yes.
And football, for a long time, there really wasn't, you'd have people saying, well, maybe Joe Montana, maybe Jim Brown. Now You got Brady, because he won all those Super Bowls. But still, I don't think there's any sport where the GOAT, the greatest of all time, is as clear-cut as hockey. And so for that reason, I think this one is huge. Great shot. Love the color. 1981 Gretzky first cover. We already talked about how a 9.4 sold for $30,000 last year. So obviously it's desirable. And that's my number 2 pick.
Yep. Another great pick there. My third pick is Tiger Woods first cover from 1996. Also, I love the image. It's just such a strong image of a young Tiger Woods. He went on to dominate the sport. I think he has ended up shy of the major wins record. I felt certain for many years that he was going to just destroy that total before he kind of got sidetracked there and injured, as well as some personal complications. But still, such a just iconic player in the sport. He revolutionized it. He brought so many fans into it. So I love this cover, and I'm going to put this one at number 3.
I'm with you. I love this cover too. I think it's an amazing first cover, and I'm honestly not even much of a golf fan at all, but that cover is pretty sweet. So number 3 for me, I went with Michael Jordan first pro cover. So we got Michael Jordan. That shows you how, like you said, he's such a huge figure in the collecting hobbies. And so he's shown up twice in our first 6 picks. His first cover, obviously still in college in his North Carolina uniform, but this cover has a lot of significance. I've seen some collectors say that they prefer this one over his first cover.
Yep.
I'm not quite in that camp. I love this cover, and it's almost like a 1A, 1B. But I would still probably personally give the slight edge to that first cover that you picked earlier. But this one is amazing. First one with the Chicago Bulls. This was his rookie year. A Star is Born. You got the old school Chicago jersey. Michael Jordan lights up the NBA. They just put out that awesome movie Air, with Ben Affleck, and they showed some copies of this on the newsstand. That was a really cool scene there.
I remember that.
So yeah, this one's beautiful. And actually, I don't know. You probably saw this, Mike, but there's a 9.8 newsstand of this that is going up on Heritage here in the next few weeks.
Amazing. Yeah.
That will be really interesting to see what that one goes for.
Completely agree. Soft market or not, I think that's gonna command a ton.
I think that'll be big.
It's gonna be big. So my fourth pick is the LeBron James first cover. And we know the story behind this. This is one of the more well-known Sports Illustrated cover images, I think. Pretty storied. Very few athletes before they've gone pro were on the cover before this. And they took a bit of a chance. And in my opinion, it's really, it made sense that they did this. He went on to be one of the all-time greats, of course. And such a cool image. This one has a higher pop count than a lot of the other ones that we would probably put on this list. I think now it's 250 plus for the newsstands have been graded at this point, but still compared to cards, so much fewer. And this is, I would say this magazine cover is more iconic than almost any rookie card that he has. You can make that argument, I think.
I've never thought of that. That's a good point.
I have seen prices for this continue to fall as of late, which is a bummer to me. But, I think over time, this is still going to hold quite a bit of value, still going to be very collectible. I don't think that's ever going to change. I think LeBron's market in general has been a little softer as of late, despite putting up 30 points a game in year 21. But I won't get on
the all-time scoring leader.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of that I think was us waiting for that to happen, and then it happened, and then we're like, okay, now what? But he's still playing. He's still playing at a high level. There's still story to be told, in my opinion. And even after he's said and gone, or his career is gone at least, or over, I should say, I think that there's going to be appreciation for him and everything that he's done. So I think that this is always going to have a place. Love this cover. This had to be in my top 5.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm not a big LeBron fan, but I absolutely recognize and acknowledge the collectability of him. And if there is one thing that I really respect about LeBron, it is that he lived up to all of these expectations. And with all of the enormous hype that was placed on him from day one, even before day one, way back, it started when he was a junior in high school. The dude never really slipped up.
No.
He really has, I don't know. It's honestly amazing when you look at all of even we just talked about Tiger a minute ago, and you think about all the athletes, and Kobe, is my favorite basketball player, and he had his issues. You think about all the guys that have fallen into traps and issues, financially or personally or whatever. LeBron's really never done that, and he's probably the most hyped prospect and athlete in my lifetime.
Yes.
And for him to do what he has done now with all of those expectations at an early age is really incredible. And he's not the first person that Sports Illustrated anointed, as the next big thing. They did that many times, and the majority of them did not pan out.
Absolutely.
But this one did. And so even though he's not my favorite player, he gets my respect for that. And I totally agree with you that this is easily one of the most collectible issues out there.
Real quick before I let you pick your next pick, with Wembanyama coming out now, and people talking about commentators comparing him to the hype, his hype compared to LeBron's hype, and how he maybe would, if they were in the same draft class, he would actually be picked before LeBron just because of his skill set. That may be true. I'm not sure. But Is it me, or is this hype that we're experiencing with Wembanyama feel less than what we experienced with LeBron when he was coming out?
I think LeBron's was greater. I think
I think so
LeBron had
too.
more hype. I also personally think the hype on Wembanyama is ridiculous. The dude's a unicorn, okay, with his skill set and his size. But for me, when I look at the history of NBA players over whatever 7'2", and especially with his frame, he's not built like Shaq. He's built more like, Kevin Durant or Manute Bol. A lot of the times they break down, Yao Ming, Manute Bol. I have a really, really hard time seeing him live up to the expectations. I think that he definitely, obviously the skill set and the talent is there. My primary concern is longevity. And even Yao Ming had a great peak. I think he was an all-star for several seasons, but the longevity wasn't there. And if I were to make a prediction on Wembanyama, that would be what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I have high hopes for him. I think he's a great kid. Everything I've seen of him in interviews, he seems like he has a good head on his shoulders, and he does have a unique skill set. It's going to be really interesting to see it play out. But as far as the hype's concerned, I still, in my lifetime, haven't seen anything compared to what we experienced when LeBron came out.
I agree totally. All right, my number 4 pick, Larry Bird, first cover. The Hick from French Lick. I don't know why I love this cover so much. I think this is definitely one of the top most collectible issues. Larry Bird, legendary, helped revive the NBA along with Magic Johnson in the 80s. I love that. I love it whenever you've got a superstar athlete and they had a really early cover, like before they were even a pro. So I love that he's in his Indiana State jersey. I think that the cheerleaders, holding the finger, the whole thing about him being the secret weapon. He was kind of like just almost this like unknown superstar playing in Terre Haute, Indiana. I just think this cover is awesome. And I think Larry Bird is awesome. And that's why I went with it at number 4.
This cover has so much personality that I don't think most card manufacturers, certainly at the time, if not in general, would even think about going into that direction. This kind of shows where like some of these publications, they felt like the freedom to be a little bit more creative in a lot of ways. And it's not just about like some interesting design with glitter on it. It's like actually like the content's more interesting.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I couldn't have said that better. And that's what Sports Illustrated was great at. And that's why we love so many of these covers.
Yeah, absolutely. Another quick thing I want to say about that, and I've heard people talk about this in roundtables, sports magazine roundtables. With cards, there's a lot less collectability with rookie cards of players in their collegiate uniforms compared to their pro uniforms. That doesn't seem to really translate the same way with magazines, with sports magazines. From everything that I've experienced thus far, collectors are plenty cool with their collegiate uniforms, or LeBron's case, if he has high school uniform, being collectible even ahead of some of the pro uniforms.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That for me, that's not a factor. And I have also seen and heard that same thing. I think there are a handful of collectors out there who are like, no, I don't necessarily, they would prefer to have the first pro cover over, their first cover maybe in their college uniform. But I just don't see that applying for me personally the same way it does with sports cards. I think a lot of that with sports cards is like a lot of those college cards that started coming out weren't licensed. Or they weren't manufactured by some of the,
that's
the
a big
brand.
aspect. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think that's part of why they haven't been considered as important as the actual, pro rookie card. But I just don't see that applying as much for me personally with the magazines. Cause, we're talking about the same publication. It's Sports Illustrated. And if to me, if they made the cover as, before they were a pro, that's even a bigger deal. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting discussion. And It's interesting to see how people have some different viewpoints on that.
Maybe it's slightly akin to a character's origin, like
Oh yeah,
issue in like a comic book or something.
yeah,
You know, sometimes even if they just have like one frame in a comic book for the first time, that's worth a ton of money if they're a big deal character, right?
yeah, for sure.
And I don't know if we really touched on it, but there is a sort of some sort of overlap here between comic books and sports cards.
Oh yeah,
When it
big
comes to
time.
sports magazines. Okay, my last pick is a 1955 first cover Yogi Berra. And now this I do believe is very collectible. However, some of my own personal feelings did seep in on this pick a little bit. Me and my girlfriend are huge Yogi Berra fans. I think that people should celebrate him much more than they do. He was an incredible player, an incredible person. Accolades, huge accolades, 10 championships, I believe.
Most of any player.
Yep, 3-time MVP, 18-time All-Star. I mean, this is in the era of giants. This is in the era of Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle, and at the time Duke Snider was a big deal. Like, there's huge players in this era, and he was right there with the best of them. For the most storied franchise maybe in sports. So I really feel like he should be getting a lot of love. He does get some love. I think he deserves even more. And this cover is just so cool, right? I know a lot of other people have commented on, the uniqueness of some of these early, close shot covers. I think they're great. This is such an intimate shot of Yogi, through his catcher's mask there. And yeah, this was my 5th pick.
I think what makes this cover so great to me is obviously, like you mentioned, the photography is great, but this was 1955, if I'm not mistaken. And Sports Illustrated at that time, they were putting out more covers and content for the upper class. They were actually a little bit scared to jump into the spectator sports.
Mm-hmm.
So you see so many more what we look at as weird covers, like boating and,
yes,
scuba diving and wind sailing and croquet, whatever, they had a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
There weren't a ton in really in the 50s, like in those first, whatever, 5 or 6 years, there weren't a ton of what we consider as the major sports, the football, basketball, baseball. So that's one of my favorite things about this one is this was one of the first, 10 or 15 of what I consider to be the real covers,
Right.
That's what I like about this is it's one of the very first ones of those major athletes from a major sport.
We're lucky that the first cover wasn't canoeing.
We are. Yeah. Absolutely. I've thought about that many times.
Or
I don't know how that
backgammon.
happened. Yeah. Yeah. Mancala. All right. Pick number 5 for me, rounding it out. I had to go with the Roberto Clemente first cover from 1967. I love the colors on this one, but what sets this one apart for me is that it's Roberto Clemente's first and it's his only Sports Illustrated cover. Obviously, we know, his unfortunate death while he was still in the midst of his playing career. He had exactly 3,000 hits. He was off on a mission trip to, help people from, I think, help earthquake victims. And he was such a huge figure for the Hispanic community. And I think because he died and the way he died and when he died, the timing of it all, to me, he's kind of got a little bit of a mystique. Like, I think his legend is probably a little bit bigger than what it would have been if he was maybe still living, which, it's sad to put it that way, but even like you just mentioned, Yogi Berra and some of his incredible accolades, and he doesn't really get talked about that much anymore. But I think with Roberto Clemente, because of the nature of how he left the game, his stature as an athlete and as, his collectibles, I think is larger. So that for me is why this one is super collectible. This is one of those that is ultra rare. I'm pretty positive this one's got less than 10 newsstand copies currently graded. So that definitely played a factor in my ranking as well, the rarity of it. But I love this cover. I also think it's cool how it's got the some of the, it's tracking like the top hitters in the National League. So, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial. I'm not really familiar with Archie Vaughn or Bill Terry, but
they're 1930s, these guys.
Yeah, 1930s.
Yeah.
But overall, this is definitely a top cover for me.
Yeah, and like with that the kind of like colors that they were using there with those color bars, that's such a kind of like a something that was big in design during that time. We were talking about how like a lot of these really kind of like play with the eras in which they were issued. This is true to that.
For sure. All right. Well, there's our, if you're watching the video, I've got on the slide our lineup there. There's our draft. Mike, how are you feeling about your squad?
Man, I love it.
I love it too. I love seeing all 10 of these covers up there together.
Oh man. Yeah. That's it's a great looking bunch. I love to walk into somebody's garage sale and see how those looking back at me.
That'd be a nice little run to have. If you're a new collector in this hobby, you'll be in good shape if you make these your first 10 newsstands that you're shooting for.
Agreed.
Good luck. That may take you several years to track all these down. All right. So I think we did have a couple more items on our agenda, but also we really didn't know, what all we were going to get to, how long we were going to go. I think we were kind of shooting for an hour. And I think we've crossed that threshold. So Mike, what do you think about saving these other topics for our next one?
We can do that for sure. Yeah, it's certainly that last one that's something that would take more than a few minutes of diving into.
Yeah. I guess I will mention one thing related to CGC. I had made notes that I wanted to share because I thought people would be interested to know this. I mentioned earlier that I just saw some movement in my submissions on CGC. So right now, CGC has 30 days listed as their return time for both modern and vintage magazines. And when they list that, they say 30 business days. Okay. And so with my batch just today it moved from the grading or scheduled for grading phase to the grading / quality control phase. And from my experience with previous batches that I've sent in, usually once it moves to that grading and quality control stage, it gets shipped out within a few days after that. Usually
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, usually it's only in that stage for like 3 days or something. So with that knowledge, I thought people would be interested in knowing, now that CGC is kind of seemingly through their backlog, what is the actual timeline? Because we were all really, at least I know I was really skeptical when they went from taking over a year, and then all of a sudden they put 60 days at first. Was going to be their new turnaround time. And then they lowered it to 30 days, like a week later. And we were all like, no way, like that would be amazing. So here's some actual data of the timeline of this batch I sent in. So I mailed these in on May 2nd. All right. And then they were checked in by CGC on May 23rd. So that's another thing to understand, is that when you look at the turnaround time that they list, they're actually talking about, like I said, business days, but also they're talking about from the day that they check your magazines in to the day that they ship them out. So I mailed them May 2nd, but they weren't checked in until 3 weeks later on May 23rd. So take that into account. So checked in May 23rd. And then with today being July 20th, like I said, usually it's like 3 days maybe that they're in that grading phase. So I'm estimating and hoping that they're going to ship these out to me, let's say Monday, which is the 24th. So that means that we are looking at, from the day that it was checked in to the day that it will hopefully be shipped, that is about 2 months or 44 business days. So they're not too far off from that 30 business days that they have listed on the website. And, overall, like I said, that is just incredibly better than what it used to be waiting over a year. I can handle waiting 2 months and really, but if you want to know, like door to door, like from the day that you ship it out from your house, the day it arrives back to you graded, you're probably looking at about 3 months. I think that's what it's going to be.
Sure.
From when I mailed it off on May 2nd. I'm thinking I'll probably get these back right around August 1st. So about 3 months door to door. I just thought people would be interested in knowing that. Although I will say, vintage seems to be going slower. They have 30 days listed on both modern and vintage, but I sent in some vintage orders right around the same time, and they have not moved at all yet.
That's interesting you say that, because I sent in a couple orders at all the same time, with vintage included in one batch, some modern in another, and then some sort of like non-sports in the third. I got the vintage back very quickly. When I sent it to Jim to send out via his account. We were expecting it to be over a year, like you said. We got it back in, I guess, 2 months.
Wow.
It blew my mind. But the vintage came back first. Some of the modern came back very shortly after. And right now I'm waiting on these miscellaneous ones that seem to be held up for whatever reason.
Well, maybe there's no rhyme or reason. I definitely wouldn't be surprised by that.
That's true too. I'm just happy that, well, actually there was some quality control issues, which is a whole topic for probably next episode.
Yeah. But it's nice to see that we're able to get them back a little bit sooner. I mean, 3 months door to door, that's very similar to what I've experienced with PSA on some sports cards. So sure. Super reasonable in my opinion. But okay. Well, Mike, you got anything else you want to add?
It was a pleasure doing this with you, Brad. I love chatting about this, and I look forward to chatting even more.
I loved it, man. Can't wait for the next one. And to anyone still watching and still listening, really appreciate it. Be looking out for, like I said, the next one. We're going to try and do a live stream, and we would love to have you hop on and ask some questions or chat with us and try and make it a little bit interactive, and we'll keep this thing going. So, all right, we're wrapping it up. Mags and Slabs, episode 1. See y'all later.